a simplified explanation of the debt ceiling conversation. Today on Make Money Knowledge. All right, there's been a lot of conversation around this topic of the debt ceiling, and I want to give you 4 things that I think is crucial for you to understand so you don't get caught up in the dialogue of this and you see it for what it is. So let's lay out a couple of quick things that I want you to understand about the debt ceiling and why this is not the last time you're going to hear of this conversation. Even if this is the first time you're hearing about it and you're just starting to pay attention to this is going to be a constant, ongoing thing just because of the way our government is set up. In fact, the debt ceiling has been raised 78 times in our nation's history. Okay, so really that's the first thing I want you to know. First thing I want you to know is this is not a presidential issue or one Congress issue or one leader in Congress's issue. This is an ongoing thing, okay? So every modern president has had to raise the debt ceiling, going back to President Reagan, who raised the debt ceiling 17 times in an 8-year term. So he did it 17 times. I think Bush 1 did it 6 times. Bush 2 did it 7 times. I think President Obama did it 6 times. President Trump did it twice in his 4 years as presidency. So this is not exclusive to one president or one set of Congress. This is really a political negotiation tool for people to get what they want placed in certain bills and to cut or make spending in certain areas. Number 2, to understand the standings of the federal government and how it works, let's say that you're a 60-year-old person. You're a 60-year-old person and you have never missed a payment in your entire life. You made every single payment on time for your entire life, but then you go to apply for a loan and all of a sudden you've lost your job, you don't have income, you don't have assets, and the person giving you the loan is asking, how are you going to pay us? And you can't explain how you're going to pay for this loan. You can say, well, hey, we're fine because I've obviously figured out how to pay my bills over these 60 years, but that creditor does not care. And that's kind of the way that our government is set up. It's set up for our government to raise money by selling treasury bonds. And as they sell treasury bonds, they pay out an interest payment on those treasury bonds monthly or annually or whatever to the person who buys those treasury bonds. And if it's found out that the United States does not have the money to pay the interest on those treasury bonds, then you find yourself in a situation where the credit worthiness of the country goes down because they can't pay their bills. So you end up in a situation where the treasury bonds are sold off for higher, the interest rates on those treasury bonds are higher because you have a lower credit worthiness of a country or of a person who says, I'm going to pay my bills, but they end up not paying their bills. And that's really where the government finds themselves at right now. Third scenario I want to throw at you. Let's say you're a husband and a wife couple, or you're just a couple, husband, wife, doesn't really matter. In marriage, you're going to have to come to some agreements. One of the main agreements you're going to have to come to in a marriage is regarding finances and your family budget. Let's say in that family budget, you can't decide what to spend money on and where to cut your spending. And let's say after a while of being married, you realize like, hey, we're actually spending too much money and we're exceeding and we don't have enough money to really do the things that we want to do or save or what have you or pay our bills. You're gonna have to make one of 2 decisions. One of those decisions is going to be to make more money, or the other decision could be to cut or decrease the spending. And chances are you're gonna have a lot of high volume conversations about those things if you see things differently. So if you have a spouse who wants to buy a bunch of power tools at Home Depot, and you have another spouse who continuously has a box from Amazon show up at the door every single day, or sits around and watches the Power Shopping network and order things, that's going to create a lot of tension. Now, if you understand that from a family household, imagine that from a congressional bodies where you have 100 or so senators, and then you have the House of Representatives who all have an opinion on how the government should spend their money and what they shouldn't be spending money on. And then you have a president or a presidential administration who has their agenda on what the United States should be spending money on. And that becomes a very big challenge, and really that's where we are. The question really is not about the debt ceiling, because as I told you, we've raised it 78 times before. You're gonna raise it again. The question becomes, who pays for it? Or what are the things that get cut, or how do you increase spending in order to do that? And that leads me into number 4. You need to understand that a deal will get done. In fact, there's breaking news that there could be the foundation of a deal already done right now between Senator McCarthy and the president, where they've kind of drawn the two sides together and they understand that, hey, we got to get a deal done, and they're closer to a deal getting done. So hopefully that's done very, very soon, and we put this behind us for the next 18 to 24 months, where I will recycle this video, because it'll be while the faces may change and the names may change, it's still the same conversation. So a deal is going to get done. The question becomes, who pays for it? And in order for a deal to get done, you have to either decrease your spending or you increase your revenue. And the way that the federal government increases revenue is by raising taxes. All right, so the next question after this deal is done becomes, what's in the bill? Who is taking the brunt force of this? Who's going to get hurt by this? Are we cutting Medicare and Medicaid? Are we increasing revenue by raising taxes on certain things, or decreasing the tax benefits for certain things? There are already certain things that people don't know about that's already been cut in order to raise tax revenue. There's certain write-offs that have gone away in order to raise tax revenue. So that's the last thing I want you to understand. A deal's going to get done. The question is going to be, who pays the price for it? So wrap up here, and I'll tell you this. This is not a once thing. If you're just starting to pay attention to this happens every 18 to 24 months. There's also been some political suggestions that this should be put off as a conversation until after the 2024 election, which tells you that this is a political tool in order for Congress people to get things done and put things into certain bills in the United States. Okay, so frankly, as citizens, we're pawns. We're pawns here in somebody else's shell game. We're paying the price for it, but that's what you get when you have these elected officials who don't care anything or about their constituents or anything. They are just worried about getting their own agenda pushed forward. And that's my political perspective, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or anywhere in between. So hopefully you have an understanding about the debt ceiling, and I'll post this video and then I'll recycle it in 2 years when there's another conversation about this. See you next time on Major Money Matters.